Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. This is ED-UCATION from TRACKILICIOUS. With me, I have Ed Kerstetter and Danny Baisden here to do Education with Kerstetter featuring hype man Danny Baisden. And we are at Suzuka doing a GT4, getting ready for our Thursday night GT4 league. Good evening, guys. How are you doing today? As I was as I was talking to Danny about, I'm okay. Could be better. Could be worse. Right now, rewiring some pedals to make things okay for the league, but all in all, doing well. Um, uh, I unfortunately do not have my solder gun available to me. It's in one of like 30 boxes or actually like 50 boxes that I still haven't unpacked for moving. So we're twisting really well and heat shrinking and trying to do with what we have. But that's an Eric problem. Let's go to our GT4 league problem, which is figuring out our way through Suzuka. So with that, I will hand it off to you, Ed. Yeah, willing to, or actually excited to see what you have to say about Suzuka today.
Excellent.
How many people did you bunt in the iRacing League earlier?
Honestly, I think I got hit more than I did the hitting
Progress.
this time around.
Progress.
Yeah, we're doing better.
Magical.
Yeah, those MX-5s are quite fun. But here we are at Suzuka. As we were talking about before we went live on the stream, we think this is the only track, at least in ACC, that has sort of a crossover where the track sort of crosses over in itself and goes from what is a clockwise to counterclockwise, which is kind of cool and pretty unique, I think, in the racing world. If anybody in chat knows if we're right, or maybe that the track we missed and we're wrong, please let us know. But I always felt that was kind of cool here at Suzuka, and at least in ACC makes for some interesting radar blips, I guess you could say, as you're going either under or over the crossover. Always seems to frighten me a little bit when I see a little yellow blob pop up on the HUD when there's not even a car in sight. I'm waiting for something to come over the wall or something. But so yeah, let's get into it. Suzuka has, if I'm counting the track map correctly, 17 corners. But 4 or 5 of them sort of are all kind of sequenced together in the S's. And yeah, let's get down the front straightaway and take a look at turn number 1. So approaching turn number 1 here, and can I get a mic check too on Twitch if I'm coming across clear or not? But coming across, going into turn 1 here, I am looking at the access road for me for a breaking point reference. That BH Auction sign is probably another good reference if it's there, or even possibly the 100 sign. And so it's kind of breaking point is somewhere in between the 100 and the access road. So it's a little bit less. You have to be way more conservative than you're used to in the GT3s. Because the brakes stink in these cars. So coming up here, again, I'm looking at the access road. Oh, let me pull up my HUD so you can see. And as you can see, I just started getting on the brakes here. And if we kind of take a step back and take a look, we are just past the 100 board. And but in car, it looks like you're coming out pretty close to the access road. So I guess you can also kind of use the orange guardrail on the left. This is a fairly heavy braking zone, and it's a two-parter. So we're going to cover turns 1 and 2 together because they flow well and they impact each other. So for me coming into here, this is quite a heavy braking zone with a lot of trail brake. And I have to reprogram myself for the GT3s because GT3s are kind of heavy initial brake, and then you kind of let off and let the car coast and rotate. And the GT4s, it seems much faster to really attack the corner a little bit more and kind of apply medium brake all the way through the turn one. So coming through, you see hard on the brakes and then continue to be hard on the brakes. And once we get sort of toward the exit of turn one, it's a little bit of a coast, but not very long. There's some maintenance throttle, some maintenance brake to get the car pointed. And then before you know it, you're kind of entering turn two. There's a little bit of a coast here, and it's very easy to overshoot this corner and carry a little bit too much speed in. So be careful there. But yeah, it's there's no real breaking point for turn two. It's more of a visual. Depending on how you get out of turn one, impacts how you enter turn two. So there's no good braking mark or anything like that. It's all really based on feel. I try to avoid the curb as much as you can use about half the curb on the inside here. I try not to hit it too much. And then really you're being patient here, because if you get on the throttle a little too early and the car starts getting out wide, at least in the GT4s, the back end wants to start coming around, and then you're kind of chasing the car all the way out to the green AstroTurf. So you be a little patient here. You can see there's a little white as the curbing ends on the right hand side, and I tend to try to eyeball that. And as I'm coming to that, that's when I start getting back on the throttle, because I know I'm far enough in the corner to make the corner exit safely and keep momentum up without having to get out of the gas because I'm too wide. And you can see there the car kind of does like to float on exit wider than you think. So even here, as I'm starting to straighten out, the back end comes around and I have to catch it. So just be careful through on exit of 2. And I'll play this full speed from in-car, and then we'll go external. And Danny, feel free to chime in here.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed that.
Cool. And then heading back externally, I did sort of go a little bit wider in turn 1. You can cut a little bit sharper to where you actually just maybe nick that curb just a little bit. I was probably a good 3-4 feet from it, but you can definitely use that curb, and that is the ideal line. I just kind of wasn't able to put it together for the hot lap for this video, but definitely get a little closer to that than I am here. I see Vulcan in the chat, and Cardo. Hey guys, Vulcan last week scared me in the 949 qualifying race and pushed me off the track, even though he was 3 seconds behind me. So very intimidating. Seeing him get closer and closer and closer in the mirror.
He's got that effect. He's got that effect,
right?
I actually saw that live. That was very interesting.
Yeah, those bumps and Schumacher S's caught me out, but he had a fantastic drive there. I think he's even spun with some like computer lag or something, and he still managed to win it. So good job there, Vulcan. But yeah, coming into the next set of corners. So this is the S's. So we'll cover 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 probably all together. I love these set of corners, at least in GT3 cars. In GT4s, they're not quite as fun because it's not quite as flowy, I feel like. But you can still see my screen. I heard a Discord jump in there. Yeah, there we go. So you want to make sure that you approach turn 3 from as far right as you can. So what you don't want to do is when you exit turn 2, get so far wide that you don't have the time to get back to the right-hand side. So set yourself up for success in turn 3 by maybe being a little bit of conservative exiting turn 2. Get over to the right-hand side, and it's going to make your ability to do a repeatable rhythm in the S's much easier to do if you enter it, right? If you're off in turn 3, that means you're going to be off in 4 and maybe off in 5. It just cascades, right? So I always try to get into a very good rhythm entering turn 3, and a lot of times that'll just flow into the other 3 or 4 or 5 corners that make up the S complex here at Suzuka. This is another one where I don't really have. It's not barely a break, right? So you're going into this. You can tell I'm already starting to turn into the corner, and I'm still full throttle. So you can throw the car in here a little bit more than you think you can, and it's just a dab of the brake you could see, and then you can use all the curb, even the green a little bit if you want to on the left hand side for this first curb on the left. At this point, at least in the McLaren, I have to downshift now because it's between gears. Some other cars you might be able to stay in fourth, but not in the McLaren. I come down into third, and then this corner you can use curb, but you don't want to use the green, and you don't want to get too high up on the curbing. And you see here, I just about got as high up as you want. I didn't quite touch the green, or at least what it feels like in the car. I guess out of car, maybe I did. But you don't want to crest the curb. You want to stay at least what it feels like on the curb. You don't want to go over it like you can on turn 3. And this one is a little patience too. Exiting, this would be what 3, 4, exiting 4, because you want to set yourself up for 5. So you don't want too much of a shallow entry. You want to at least be about halfway back to the right-hand side. As I say that, halfway is maybe a little bit aggressive, but you don't want to enter super, super steep. And so this corner, though, you can use the green again. So, like, usually it's this way. I think about it, the left-handers at Suzuka in the S's, you can use more curb, and you can get up on the green. The right-handers, you want to just get up to just before the top of the curb, but don't crest over it. And this is another one where you can carry a little bit more speed in. There's no braking points. It's all feel and flow, which is one of the reasons I enjoy it a lot. And then exiting this corner, this is another one where you don't want to be on the curb on the right-hand side entering. And I try to hook the curb the entire way around. There's a few different ways around here, but I found that hooking the curb, you're able to keep up a lot of the momentum through the right-hander, and also sets you up for the top of the hill, which is 7, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, a Dunlap in a good position. So by hugging this curb, being a little bit patient, being able to get the car back to the right-hand side and then kind of throw it into the Dunlap curb, that tends to help me with passing opportunities in the race, and it just overall tends to be a little bit quicker. And here you can use the curb. There's no yellow curbing here, green curbing, but you can throw it in. And I'd say this is a corner where every time you go through it, just throw it in a little bit harder when you're doing practice, and you'll be surprised how much it'll stick, because the car sort of like plants as it goes uphill, and it helps it rotate. And I just recommend experimenting with it there. And then this is about as far wide as you want to run. If you clip the grass anymore, it tends to make the car go straight, and then you're in the dirt or completely off the throttle. So don't go any wider than that. I know there was a lot of corners, so I'll back it up and run it through full speed. And then, as always, Danny, if you have anywhere you want me to stop, let me know.
Yeah, I'm happy you summed up the curbs like you did, because I never thought about it in the sense that touch the right hand one, or no, you can use the left hand ones but avoid the right hand ones to a degree. So I never really thought about that, but it's true. You can use them to your advantage, and you can also use them as your disadvantage. If you know your car is going to need a little extra rotation, you can touch them just a little bit, and it'll move the car into the corner a little better. But yeah, this is a very hard series of corners, and one that I struggle with. So thanks for that explanation, Ed.
Oh yeah. We'll do it externally here. I'll see if I what it feels like in the car is actually what it looks like outside. So you can definitely use a little bit more of that curb. You can get up on that green, right? And that's going to allow you to enter straighter, carry a little bit more speed into the next right-hander. So, you know, I ideally get up on that curb a little bit more. And then this one, yeah, I guess you're on the, like, right on the edge. I guess you're on the green. You don't want to get on the dirt. It feels like you're not on the green, but, you know, feel isn't real type of thing. So let's see where we're at here. How close do we get up there? Ooh, just barely. So don't abuse this curb too much. That is about as far as you can go without the car bouncing, from my experience. So that's the limit there for sure. And then get yourself set back up. And again, you can use a little bit. You can use, you know, that green on the left-hand side. Use it a little bit more than I did here. And then the right-hander, I think I ran this pretty well. So you want to, you know, any more you're going to be hitting bumps, right? But you can kind of hook the curb, and it really feels like you're hooking it in the car. Like it just, the car sticks to it and it doesn't leave it. And again, it kind of makes you carry a little bit more speed through. I don't know if it's with the banking or just de-wedging the car or what. But I mean, experiment for sure. But this is the quickest way I found through the right-hander. And then get yourself back to the right-hand side and kind of throw it in up the hill. In the McLaren, it's like a short shift up, and let it feed out. Try not to get the grass and the dirt, and then set yourself up for probably one of the hardest set of corners to do consistently in this game. I think Degner 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken. Degner 1 and 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll go back in car here. In the GT4s, you can abuse the curb on the inside a lot more than you can in the 3s. Like in the GT3s, in my experience, at least in the Porsche and some of the cars I've driven, you have to hit the curb correctly. If you run over the curb, not enough. Like if the right side strike the red and white curbing at a weird angle, it'll throw you off. But if you straddle it, the car will hold. But it's a very slim margin for error. In the GT4s, because they're heavier and they're higher up off the ground and stuff, it's a little less critical to hit the curb exactly right. There's still a benefit, but it's not going to like kick the car out as much as it will in the GT3s. So I'd experiment running over the curb. This one is fairly conservative where I hit it. And actually, let me back up. I didn't even think about braking points here. Let me cover where we're braking here. I'm looking at the 50 marker when I go to brake. And realistically, you're in between the 50 and the 100, probably about halfway. And it's a pretty heavy initial braking point just to get the car woke down and the nose pointed. And then there's a decent amount of coast, and then you're back on the throttle as soon as you feel the car plant and it gets feeling a little bit comfortable. And this is about as far wide as you can run without getting a track cut here. And I'm trying to swing it wide, and then I'm looking at where the red and white curbing ends and trying to like just have my left side wheels run over that to enter Degner 2. And again, not a real, this comes up so quick, I really don't look for braking points. I just look at distance to apex. And, you know, there's a couple different ways through here. You can clobber the curb and get on the green, but a lot of times that'll bounce the car a little bit too much. And so like this one here, I think I hit pretty well where you get your right sides on the curb just a little bit, and then you can let the car kind of swing out wide, and that's as far as I could usually go without getting a track cut there. So, but you can definitely carry a little bit more momentum through Degner 2 than you think because of the banking. Just be careful in race not to swing it out too wide. I don't know if it's like Barcelona where it'll nab you for 2 track cuts pretty quick. I think I've gotten that here before by going off on Degner 1 and Degner 2. So this is definitely like a danger area where in longer races, not the 15-15-15 sprint, but you really have to pay attention because you can get a 1-2 whammy pretty easily. Let me play that through full. Danny, how do you approach Degner 1 and 2?
Pretty much the same way. I chunk that first curve pretty hard, and then just try to be patient through the second second right-hander, if you try to force anything, you're going to end up driving off the track, and it's um, so easy to mess up. I think the first curb too, a lot of people get thrown off by not committing to running over it. So they'll either try to avoid it or they'll clip it just a little bit, and it will upset the car. So you really have to be committed over that first curb, otherwise it will throw you wide. If you don't get a track cut, you're for sure going to end up in the dirt, and neither one is fun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a trust corner. I kind of think for me, it kind of feels a little similar to um, Kailami, that right-hander, the second to last corner, that right-hander where you just kind of have to trust that you're throwing it in at the right speed. Obviously, if you hit that inside curb there, you're dead. So it's a little bit different there, but for me, it kind of feels similar. Similar trust, the build-up that you have to have there as the practice or race goes on. As you can tell, that's where I started braking right between the 50 and 100. Again, hard initial braking, and make the car point and get the curb. As you can tell, I hit it pretty good. There, you can go over it a little bit more without too much detriment, but that's a pretty decent reference, I think, right there. And then let it swing wide, back on the brakes, a little bit of coast through, let the banking carry the car, let it swing out wide, and then avoid that little grass clip. I kind of always shoot to like just nick that grass there. It doesn't really do anything, but it's just a reference on on exit. And then yeah, we're set up now for corner number, if I'm getting that right, 11, the hairpin.
The other thing about the
Mhm.
Dagner is that it's very car dependent, right? Like the curbability of the car. You know, some take curbs, especially in GT3. Some take curbs better than others. You know, like the Ferrari and the Porsche are stereotypically harsher on curbs versus the Mercedes that just eats curbs up. So another thing to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, a little less variance in the GT4s just because of the higher ride height.
Right.
But yeah, definitely applies to the threes. All right, cool. All right, coming up to the hairpin. I hate this corner. I don't think I've gotten this corner right my entire time I've been playing ACC. So, Danny, I'm going to let you cover what you do here because I suck at this corner. do you
Sure.
know? Have you practiced yet? Do you know what your reference is as you're coming in?
Yeah, I've done a few. There's so many ways to take this corner. You can take it as a double apex. You can take it as a earlier apex and focusing on your exit. I think the key here is to do what fits your driving style the best. So going into the corner, Ed stopped it right where it should be. So I reference the end of the curb as my braking point. And I'm hard on the brakes down into second gear, and I try to stay as far right as I possibly can without clipping the grass, which is easy to do. The car will want to drift a little left, so you want to hold it on the right. As you're down into second, you want to hold off on turning in early. Just be patient with the car. Wait until you're down to where you need to be. And then as you start feeling that you're going to make the apex, start your turn in. Again, it's all about a patience game. Off the throttle, off the brake, let the car coast through the corner. And when you see that exit, uh, depending on your car, start applying your throttle. If in the McLaren at least, it will spin, so you can lose some time that way. In some of the other cars, you can hook up a little better. So just be patient with your throttle application. Be patient with your turn in. Be patient with everything. If you rush it, you'll end up wide. If you try to push or if you try to take the corner faster than you should, you'll end up wide. If you get on the throttle too early, you'll run off the track or you'll spin the car. So it's just it's a difficult corner, and I don't know if anybody ever does it right. And if you do, then I am 100% watching your replay 500 times to figure it out. But yeah, it's
Can
tough.
I ask
It's really
you,
tough.
do you enter wider than this? Do you keep it all the way to the right-hand side?
No,
On entry?
it's really hard to keep it all the way to the right hand side because you've just gone through that corner and the car naturally wants to drift out. So that's about where I can get it, at least for the McLaren. Some of the GT3s with the added arrow, you can really keep it onto the right. But I think I usually take it more like a double apex. So I'll try to apex early, let the car swing out just a little bit, and then really focus on my exit. But like Cardo said, coach knows everything, and a late apex is definitely a way to go as well. So breaking in deep, focusing on that apex late, and then maximizing your exit. So there's a few ways you can take it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna have to experiment with that late apex a little bit because I tend to hug it, and then I just get wheel spin on exit, and I don't get a good pull down the straight. So I'll have to do what Cardo and Vulcan are advocating there. So don't do what I do. Do something different. Is is
No,
my
you
my
did do it
advice
well.
to Hairpin. I'll just play it just for reference here. Let me back up here and start. Just for completeness.
And speaking of coach, if anybody does want coaching for a really reasonable rate, hit up Coach Cardo. Well done, Eric.
He's on point with that.
I'm
now.
on it.
Yeah, he is.
I
He loves those
finally
exclamation
learned.
points.
I finally learned how to do it. So I'm going from like the old man going, "Oh, what does this button do?" to like, "Oh, I'm keeping up with the young kids these days."
Oh man. All right. Next up after the hairpin is I guess it's 200R turn 12. I didn't even know that was a corner. It's flat here. However, I would just caution you where if you're used to driving in the GT3s, it isn't easy flat. So if you like daydream for a second, there's a potential of you not hitting. If you're not too tight in here, you turn late, you can actually swing out wide and you're in the dirt and you're losing a few seconds during the lap. So while it really isn't a corner where there's any braking or lift or anything like that, it is one that in the GT4s is a little tricky if you're being a little lazy or if you're falling asleep at the wheel or trying to take a nap before you get down to a spoon.
Even even in GT3s, I've killed myself through there. And it's going to be really difficult when you're trying to make a pass too, because sometimes you'll get a good jump out of the hairpin and you'll have that acceleration, but two cars going through there is going to be tight.
Yeah, for sure.
So be prepared to lift. Also, don't go too far inside where you bounce over a curb. I forget where it's at, but it's right around the apex. And if you nail that curb, the car is going to get into the air and either spin or throw you out into the dirt.
Are you talking about this one up here, this right-hander?
Yeah. So if you cut
watch
that
out.
and nail the
This.
curb,
Yep.
you are in bad shape. So be
Yeah.
careful here.
What's the word here? Damn it. Obey the cones, I guess. That wasn't the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're too far right, this is where the bump is. And yes, it is
Yeah.
deadly.
Respect the
Good
cones.
point. Respect, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool. So coming down into Spoon here, my reference point is this access road. You can also use the green, and it feels like I'm braking right at it, but again, I'm probably 20 feet away from it at this point. And this in the GT4s is quite a heavy braking zone, and you're really looking to get the car woed down a lot more than you think, at least. And so here, I try to aim for the curb and clip the curb a little bit, and then this Spoon is just a tricky corner because it's way tighter than turns 1 and 2, but it has a similar cadence to it because you're on the brakes heavy, then you're off, and there's a little bit of coast period there, and then you're back on the next corner, which tends to feel like it has a radius that gets tighter as the corner goes on, and so I think there's a lot of it feels like there's a lot of similarities between corners 1 and 2, and I think they count this as just one corner 13. But a similar thing, you're on the brakes going into the first left-hander, and then even here you do get back on the throttle a little bit depending on how well you get on through the first left-hander, and you use the curbing on the right-hand side. Don't go too far; it'll upset the car, and there's a track cut out there. But then really this is the most important part of the corner because it sets you up for the long straightaway. And so this is another one where it's so tough to get the compromise right between carrying enough speed on entry and getting a good run off, and then maybe babying it a little bit on entry just so you can get a really a decent run off. But then you can lose a lot of time if you baby it here on entry. So it's very hard to get right. It's a very tricky corner for sure. And here I'm looking to keep up, again, that balance of keeping enough momentum up while letting the car rotate for the second part of the corner where it tightens up, and then being able to get back on the throttle full. So you can tell, like, right past that curbing is usually when you want to get back on full, and let the car feed out a little bit. Again, don't go too wide here because there's a track cut and the bounces will slow you down. But yeah, it's difficult, and again, there's not a good reference other than the actual entry into the corner, at least that I'm aware of. And since I stopped that about 30 times, let me play it through, and then Danny, feel free.
I believe it's off camber as well, which is the other reason why it makes it so challenging in that corner exit. You need the patience going in and patience on throttle going out, otherwise you lose the rear end.
Yeah, 100% patience with GT4s is just a common theme, unfortunately. With GT3s, you just have so much generated downforce from the aero on the car that you don't have to worry about these problems. With when you're relying on mechanical grip, you really have to use the throttle to balance the car and use the brake to balance the car through the corners.
Yeah, and the other thing with the GT4 is it just reduced horsepower, so it's very hard to make up momentum that you've lost. Where in the GT3s, it's a little less punishing. Like if you watch NASCAR when they were in the 550 horsepower package, and you get off the throttle a little bit in the corners, and 7 people pass you because you lose that momentum. It's a little bit like that in the GT4s. Whereas you run a higher horsepower package, and a little mistake means a little bit less because you're able to make up that ground a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to throw my NASCAR references in, so sorry, folks that don't want to. All right, we'll do an external cam here and run through.
I do think I take a little bit more inside curve than you do here on this first corner. But I also don't take as much exit curve as you do. So there are different lines through there. Just experiment with what your car likes, and what works with your driving setup or your driving style. I can't think tonight.
CMX5.
I think I'd brake maybe a little earlier than you too, but I do use the access road as a braking point.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I missed this curb a little bit here. Definitely feel free to ride it. And then I found that this one, there's a little compromise here because if you take a little bit wider entry, you can keep a little bit more momentum up, as opposed to like, I guess I try, and I missed it here, but I try to just nick the curb, because you don't want to go too hard over it because it's going to mess you up, and then you're not going to carry too much speed on exit. But yeah, definitely here I'm a little bit wider. You want to be at least at the curb, I feel like, ideally. So yeah, good points. All right, now you take a little bit of a break as you're coming up the hill before 130R, which is not as easy as a corner from a speed perspective to hit in the GT3s, or in these cars as it is the GT3s, but you die a lot less often. I feel like because in the GT3s you tend to, at least some of the cars, the rear end can kick out and you can spin. And for the most part, in the GT4s, you're just plowing off circuit. So a little bit of a little bit of a plus and a little bit of a negative, I think. But here, for me, I try to widen the entry as much as possible. So I'm going to switch to the external. You want to make sure you're right on this white line. I did it. See, it always have to happen once a stream where I like hit the wrong button and go back to 5 laps before.
Time traveling Ed.
Yeah, right. So this is one where, and by the way, that's the crossover we're talking about at the beginning of the video. You want to use all that you can here. In car, I always feel like I can use a little bit more, and then I do, and then I get in the dirt because I use too much. Like there's probably another, what do you say, guys?
2 centimeters. So you're slacking
2
there.
centimeters, another about an inch. 2.54 centimeters. There you go.
I mean, you could probably like
because I
split
mean the
your
contact
tire.
patch is here, right? And so you got
Yeah.
yeah. So use as much as you can on entry, and when you're doing test laps, because this is sort of straight. For a little bit before, I try to dip my wheels. Again, practice laps. So right when this access road stops right there, you can kind of test the waters by, again, not in the race, but dipping your right side so you know how far your car your wheels are from the grass, and just get a feeling for that in practice, because every little inch matters when you're coming through here. Let me
That's what
jump
she
on
said.
soundboard. Man, there's so many innuendos tonight between the MX5 league and this.
Oh God, yeah.
So here, I personally don't look at any braking markers. I don't know if you do, Danny, but for me, this is because it's so quick. I'm purely looking at distance to apex here.
I do.
And judging that. What do you use?
So right after the 100 board, there is a red, almost like reflective.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that little red. I forget what you would call that. It looks like those signs that they post up when it snows a lot, so it always is above the snow. But yeah, I use that little red box to indicate my breaking point.
Oh, I have to try that, because that does seem like a pretty good reference. And for me, at least in the GT4s, it's a decently heavy entry just to get the car wound down, and then I'm trying to get back on the throttle as soon as I can. So get the car pointed. You can get the curb here pretty well, and then get back on the throttle, and then let the car carry out as wide as you can let it without getting a track cut, which is a little bit wider than that, probably about another 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you keep 2 tires on the curb, you're fine.
Okay, good to know. And so definitely, you need a little patience through there, because it is very easy to just get on the throttle too early. But a very good passing opportunity if someone messes up. So.
And don't be afraid of using that inside curb too. You can certainly chunk over it a little bit. I mean, don't abuse it, because it will bounce your car up into the sky and you will go wide. But you can use it to help rotate the car in and carry a little bit more momentum.
Gotcha. So you use more than this?
Yeah, a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
Okay, have to try that.
No. I mean, no, I don't.
No, none of the curve. None of the curve.
No.
Well, cool. Well, this brings us to the last complex here at the track, which is corners 15, 16, and 17. It's the Casio triangle, the whole thing, or is the Casio triangle just the last corner? It's the whole thing, right?
I do not know. I want to say it's the whole thing, though. I think Casio. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, but I'm sure Carta will know, or someone else.
And so from a breaking point perspective, I actually use how the dirt sticks out a little bit. There's a little patch of dirt that's like close to the track. Realistically, you probably want to use, I don't know what you use, Danny, but like a little bit before the 100 sign is typically where you're going to start braking.
I use so you can start to see where the grass gets greener.
Yeah. Okay.
So I use that
This
when I
here.
start to see more of a solid green grass on the
Okay.
left. That's a tribute back to David Carter. He gave me that one a long time ago.
See, I use this. If you can look at where above where the 4 is on the RPM and
Oh
tag.
yeah, the little empty patch.
That's what I use. But then the bad thing is there's like one here, and so unless I like I'm really paying attention and count my dirt patches right, and there's like a lesser one here. So like, yeah, I think maybe I'll switch to using where it greens up a little bit, but
Or use the guy waving the green flag on the left.
yeah, all the way up there. Let me and he's going at it.
Man, he's after it.
Jeez. So, and this is another tricky braking zone. It's so easy to want to throw the car in early, but the track sort of widens out a little bit here, where you can kind of keep it outside even more than I'm doing here before turning in. And again, this is another set of corners where I never feel like I hit right. I know in the GT4s I try to take a lot of curb on this first one, and then that tries to set me up for a decent run through and where I'm on the throttle a lot. But in the McLaren, it seems like we're in between gears in second and third, where like coming out of here, we're right hitting the rev limiter pretty quick. And so I don't know, Danny, what do you try to attack the first curb,
Yeah,
and then not the second, or
so I'll go straight over that first curb like you did, and then at most I'll try to aim to get at least 2 tires over the next one. I won't be as aggressive, but I certainly use them a little bit. I use the second one a little bit more than you did.
okay? Yeah, I feel like if you're up on the green too much, it bounces and you don't get a good drive off. But yeah, it's definitely worth experimenting to see what works because, as Eric alluded to earlier, the different cars have different tendencies as
Yeah.
going through there. So let me play this fool.
For example, the Camaro, you don't even have to brake; you just go straight.
Curbs don't exist with the Camaro.
The Alpine, it will spin before it even gets to a corner. So.
Yeah, you can tell here. I'm afraid to keep it a little out wide here. I tend to cut this a little bit more than I probably should, losing some time, to be honest. I don't know, Dan, if you're a little bit wider on entry, but for me, I always tend to. It's easy for me to cheat on entry, because I think I'm afraid of actually dipping a wheel in the grass there for whatever reason on the braking zone. But
I'm the same way. Usually, when I first start working on this track, I'll be a little bit more aggressive with that until I actually dip a tire into the grass. And it's tricky because you would think, oh, it's just going to go straight, but it's actually a continuous right-hand corner, and it will keep going down through the straight. So that corner is progressively coming in as you're trying to make the apex, but you also want to keep the car as wide as possible. So it's tough.
yeah.
There's been many times where I touch the grass and go straight, and at that point you are using the access road and just praying someone doesn't hit you
Right.
when you rejoin. So it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. For me, other than the hairpin, the second hardest set of corners here. And then coming off the corner, there is just a couple things to keep in mind. I would avoid going too much further right here because there is a nasty bump. Again, it impacts the GT3s a little bit more than the 4s, but it'll still kill your momentum a little bit. This is about as far as you want to go right before you really hit that bump. And then in the GT4s, you really try to keep an inside line here and reduce the distance as you're coming around to finish the lap.
Where you pointed out that bump too, it's important to note that if you dip your tire off of that curb, so if you actually touch the grass on the exit there, you could possibly get a pressure loss there. So be careful.
Good to know. All right, cool. So what we'll do is, as we usually do, we'll run it through in car, Then we'll run it through externally once, and then we'll open it up for any questions.
Looks like you were fighting a little understeer there.
Yeah, I didn't get as much of the inside curve as I wanted to, but I was like, I gotta keep it flat because I made a decent time through the S's, so I didn't want to lose it.
Yeah. For anybody that saw that, going wide there too can be detrimental. So it's much safer to lift and make the corner than to dip tires into the grass. Yeah, I think you did that hairpin really well too. So I'm gonna shut up now and let people watch. It is pretty wild seeing the differences in driving style, though.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we'll throw it through externally.
Any questions from anybody out there? I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything. So, except for Ricardo being handsome as ever. I completely agree, Cardo. Yeah, a lot of the breaking points are very similar to the GT3s. They're not exact, so in a lot of cases you can either brake a little early, or in some cases you can brake later because you're not carrying as much speed. So, but generally they're pretty close. Even wet, your braking points are generally pretty close to the same.
Yeah, I tend to back up my braking points because I know them in GT3 a lot better than GT4, so I tend to back them up maybe, I don't know, 40 feet, 30, 40 feet
Yeah.
for first trial and error. The only other thing I could say is like while the braking points are similar, I do feel like the amount of time you're on the brakes is longer. Like you're usually on the brakes a little bit deeper into the corners than you are in the GT3s.
You are. Yeah, you certainly trail brake much more in a GT4 than you do a GT3.
And then
And
the
it
curbs
also.
and the wet. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say like Porsche's brakes compared to a GT4 brakes are completely different, and that goes with the Aston and a lot of those other cars. Sorry.
Yep. No. So, Cardo, for the curbs. I'm trying to remember actually which race was that where we all messed up tire strategy. I think it was the 949 one last year, where like everybody
Uh,
went wet or dries, or most people went dries, and it was like the track never dried. But I don't remember the curbs being terrible. Uh, Using them here. What I do remember though, if there's a lot of standing water, the entry in turn one, you'll hydroplane. At least in the GT4s. I think it'll even happen in the GT3. Sorry, at least in the GT3s. I think it happens in the GT4s a little bit too, where there's just a big puddle of standing water. Like, let's see, where would it be? Right about here, and then so you'll go in for brakes, and then you'll just hear that rush of water sound, and you're like, "Oh crap!" And it just doesn't turn.
yep.
So that's what I remember about water buildup here. Otherwise, like, yeah, you don't want to kill the curbs as much, but I don't recall them being like ice like they are in some other tracks in the wet.
Yeah, they're not too bad here. And I think with a new tire model, the wet tires are. They feel like they have a little bit more grip, a little bit more forgiveness with curbs in the rain. I could be wrong. At least when I was driving slicks at Silverstone for our first Silverstone race in Trackalicious, uh, they weren't as deadly as I thought they would be on slicks. So
That was quite an amazing drive you had there, by the way.
that was pretty. Yeah, it. I got very very lucky, as Cardo would say.
Well, cool. I think that wraps up as I get you guys dizzy from moving the camera around. But I don't know. I don't know why people don't like Suzuka. I think it's a fantastic complex. And I'm guessing that's a golf. Is that a golf driving range or something, or a baseball
It
field
looks
there?
like a baseball diamond, I would
It's a
guess.
baseball
I
field.
always
Yeah.
wonder what that fence was as you're going up the hill.
Considering Japan's cultural obsession with baseball, which I don't understand, quite frankly. I mean, I don't know where the crossover happened and when and why, but it's cool to see that diversity in baseball. But yeah, that to me looks like a baseball diamond.
I'm pulling up
Imagine,
Google Maps right now, and
imagine hitting a home run and then, oops, I'm sorry about your car.
it is a baseball field. You guys are correct.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's cool. Now I got to see if the fence is actually like modeled the same way. Anyway, that'll be for another.
Because Ed's gonna use it as a breaking point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, so there you have it. Track walk for Suzuka with the GT4s.
Excellent.
Eric, turn it over to you.
Yeah, I don't think there is anyone out there that's going to be asking questions. So, just going to say thank you guys again. Another very informative and excellent track walk, which we'll be translating over to YouTube in the next or after 24 hours for it to be a VOD for people to go back and look at. But I think what's interesting of all the track walks and the details that we've gone into, I think this has been the one where, Ed, you of all time, you have most said, oh, I gotta try that. So what's scary is you're already fast, and it sounds like there are a couple of really good tips that are going to make you faster. So that's kind of cool to hear, in that it's a big learning experience for us, but also interesting to hear your interaction with Cardo and Vulcan and Danny, and how you guys learn off of each other. So that was very cool to see today. That being said, whoever is on, thanks for sticking around with us. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, join our Discord. Join 949, who have their season that's about to start this week, I believe. Yeah, Thursday this week.
Thursday, yeah.
So to give you guys a rundown again, we have Tuesday night iRacing MX5s, which sounds like the guys are having a great time at. And that's followed by our Education with Kerstetter featuring Danny Baisden track walks, getting us ready for the Thursday sessions, which before us is the 949 league, the sprint league, which is really, really fun, really cool. Great talent there. Very, very competitive racing. We highly recommend you guys go and check that out. Which then is followed by the Thursday night TRACKILICIOUS GT4 league. And then goes into our Friday night track walks with Coach Cardo Huesca, !coach, if you guys are looking for a couple of pointers and deep dive information on how to get faster at any track at ACC. And then roll into our Sunday night GT3 league, which is a blast. Great competitive season. Lots of action going on. And then finally, we have our once a month Enduros. The next one coming up, I believe, is Nürburgring. So look out for that. Those are really fun. 2 hours, 40-minute solos. A test of both a physical test and a mental test when it comes to a race length that long. Really, really fun. Highly recommend. Hope to see more guys out there, more guys and gals out there. But all that being said, appreciate everyone sticking around. Thanks again to Ed and Danny. You guys are awesome. Thank you again for doing this. It's very, very much so appreciated. And see you on Thursday for our race. Thanks, guys. Yeah, with that, good night from me, and let you guys say good night, and we'll end it here.
Good night. Enjoy. We'll see you Thursday.
See you guys.
Let's actually find someone to raid here. Who's on?
Right. There's a John Ezra. He's a newer guy. He just did a giveaway for some Huskenveld pedals, which is pretty insane. So he seems like a cool dude.
You know what, John? I didn't get a call for those pedals, and I could sure use it right now.
Same here. What the heck, John?
Thanks, John. Let's throw it over to John. Again, thanks everyone, and good night.
Have a good night.